And when we come back, YouTube has said it's going to take down anti-vaccine content that is not accurate. And it's a big move for YouTube, which is owned by Google. And coming up, we'll talk to our tech expert about what this means, because it's a big step. And that's coming up right after this. I'm Martin Strong.
Canada's home to discuss, to learn, to take action. Once again, here's Martin Strong.
Well, how about this? Every day, YouTube streams more than 1 billion hours of content. 1 billion hours of content on YouTube. And I think right about now, 80% of that is Norm Macdonald videos. That just could be my algorithm. But every time I watch something on YouTube, the next video is Norm Macdonald. But that's another story. So YouTube has announced they are taking down several video channels associated with high-profile anti-vaccine activists and advocates. And these aren't just the out there ones. One of the channels is one that is connected to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is a longtime anti-vaccination advocate. And YouTube is owned by Google, and they say they will ban any videos that claim that commonly used vaccines approved by health authorities are ineffective or dangerous. And a lot of people blame the slow vaccination rates on social media and things like YouTube. We're about 71% here in Canada, 2 shots. 56% of the U.S. population has had 2 shots, 67% in the United Kingdom. And JP Holecka is the CEO and founder of POWERSHiFTER, and he's a tech expert, and he's with us now. Hi, JP, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm very, very good. And I'm just wondering about this, because I know Twitter has canceled a bunch of people, and Facebook is always putting up warnings. How big a deal is this for YouTube?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but they really do lag. Before they make these decisions. If you look at both sides, those that are proponent, putting out there these anti-vax, quite often if you follow the money, there's usually something they're selling or something they're involved with. And on the other side, the platform side, YouTube and Twitter or whatever, there's money to be made because those controversial, well-shared clicks make them money. So, always have to think twice. If this is a big moneymaker, like anything in business, how much damage does it have to do before you decide that you're going to do something about it? And so, quote, studying it for a while, but I think we're all pretty, the consensus is that the action took too long.
Yeah, so follow the money, because like you say, if something, no matter how ridiculous, if millions of people are watching it, that makes money for them, but it also makes a lot of money for YouTube because of the commercials.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned 1 billion hours a day. I believe when I last checked for this, they've removed 137,000 hours of such said videos. If you look at that compared to the 1 billion hours of videos streamed a day, it's a minuscule amount of the content in which they've removed that's being served up.
Wow, 137,000 as opposed to 1 billion.
And that's not 137,000 a day. That's what it was like in total. It's around that number that I saw today. So, it's a tiny amount, but it probably, if you look at it, the ratio of money that content made versus some others is probably much higher. So.
Right. So what do you see for the future of social media when it comes to this kind of tribalism that we're seeing? And it seems like, especially Facebook, has been so, I don't know if complicit is the word, but it seems to be driving a wedge between people. And what do you see as the future of that?
I think there will be some form of regulation. If you look at the lawmakers in the U.S., they are starting to put together several different cases to get in and start to look at ways in which to potentially dial it back. But again, it's a double-edged sword. A lot of those that the politicians and others, they still need to have some quote flexibility in what they're posting. And so, how far will they go? Because it's when it's their turn to push something that may not be blatant, but, is in their favor. They may not necessarily want what, they're being called censored. So everybody uses it to their advantage until it maybe goes too far. But I do think that there are going to be some interventions. I mean, if you look at where we got news before, of course, which was from publications and the journalistic integrity, there were filters. Now there's of course biases, but those aren't the same as flat out putting things that are false. And I think that the real danger has been just this ability to put anything out there and getting lost in the mix. And I think also there's a large group of people that are needing to rally around with things these days, and so these groups can capture that. What is it that they want some folks to rally around? But I think that there will be some intervention, and I think there'll be some starting to dial it back in countries that are a bit more progressive.
Yeah, because it seems like Facebook has now become this place where you go to see which of your friends has kind of made a sharp turn politically.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see.
Which one you're putting into the acquaintance list?
Yeah,
moving forward.
Exactly. JP Holecka is the CEO and founder of POWERSHiFTER. And after the news, I want to talk about some of the other social media platforms. I keep hearing about them. When Donald Trump was kicked off Twitter, they said, "Oh, he's just going to go to whatever." I can't even remember what it was. And I wonder, are people viewing this stuff? So we'll talk more with JP when we continue. I'm Martin Strong.
Canada's home to discuss, to learn, to take action. Once again, here's Martin Strong.
We're talking about YouTube and how YouTube has announced they are taking down several video channels that are associated with high-profile anti-vaccine activists. And with us to make sense of it is JP Holecka, CEO and founder of POWERSHiFTER Digital. Do I say that right? POWERSHiFTER Digital?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, and so we're talking about social media and how it kind of leads to sort of a form of tribalism, and people are finding their own tribes, and in some ways it's really good. I know with me, I have my own sort of weird thing with, I collect records, and I enjoy listening to vinyl records, and I have lots of friends of mine who just say, what's the difference? I don't hear any difference. Well, why you do? You're insane. And I say, well, I believe it. I don't care what you think. I believe it. And then I find all my people, and they're all over North America, and they're all doing the same nerdy things that I'm doing. And that seems pretty harmless, but when it's storming the Capitol in Washington, that's a kind of a different thing. So I don't know what my question is for you, JP, but as someone in the digital realm, are you afraid of social media and the future of social media on society?
I think in its broadest terms, I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot of good of connecting people that are like-minded. Great things can happen, and great things do happen. But I think what is the danger is that, those that are looking for an audience that are looking for something, right? And that void needs to be filled. And I feel that a lot of the negativity that's going on outside of just, the rants, let's say, but, where there's a group that is unsatisfied, there are many of those that need and want to take advantage and harness that energy, right? And whether it's a foreign actor state, right? Could be that's happening. A lot of the disinformation that's being fed to these groups is to cause chaos within. There are those that find these groups that are disenfranchised or afraid or what have you, that are in these groups that are angry, and they usually have maybe there's legitimate reasons they're angry. Tap into that for personal gain or to become famous. We look at Alex Jones from InfoWars, right? He's not only he's selling a ton of stuff, He makes a ton of money selling stuff. So I think that social media, in its broadest terms, can coexist and work. I think where the danger is when people know the power of an audience, and if you can tap into the right emotions and the right fears, continue to grow those audiences for their own means, and whether it's selling them something or just to put themselves on their own platform or to harness it to, charge the capital. I think it's really, it's not the format, but there are dangers within it, and that's where, whether it's regulation or rules or closer scrutiny or better transparency, I think there are ways in which can make it a better, healthier place.
Yeah, and you mentioned Alex Jones, and I remember seeing a clip of him on his YouTube show warning people that the U.S. government was putting something in the water that was making the frogs gay. That's what I remember about him. But so I guess for somebody like him who is making millions and millions of dollars on YouTube, he'll just have to stop talking about vaccinations, I guess. Because I assume
he's been exited from the platform altogether. But if you see it too, he makes money selling things and getting ads, but it's a revenue share deal too. So these, the more these folks are making, the more they're getting paid by YouTube and whatnot for their share of the ads, and or if they're selling stuff through the videos. But the platforms, are making money too. So like I said at the onset, quite often it's you follow the money or follow the who wants to control or tap into an audience for their own gains.
So you're saying he's off YouTube now?
Yes.
Oh wow. Yeah. That's a big thing. And let's talk about when they banned Donald Trump from Twitter. A lot of people said, I forget the name of the platform, but it's sort of like the
Parler.
Yeah, Parler.
At the time, it was Parler. There's new ones out there. There's Gab and Rumble and a few others and MeWe that are all being started up by the more of the rights to find a place for those to come and meet, quote, censorship free, I guess is the guise or the flag they're going under. And
censorship is in quotation marks. But how big are these? Are people actually, like Parler, I guess is the biggest one. Is that a big digital company?
No, they're all, they quite often, again, there's folks taking advantage, and they don't put a lot of money behind these platforms, so they're quite often hacked within days. And a lot of data gets released. They're really poorly made, trying to capitalize on it again, and rushed and not well thought out. And so quite often they don't work very well. But there's other places in which a lot of these groups are going where they don't really need that same stream that we see on Twitter and on Facebook, which is groups within Signal, the app Signal, which are typically messaging apps. So any messaging app that you can talk one-to-one or have a group, even with iMessage or Google Chat, the minute you can start to put people into a private group, that's where it can happen in any platform. And you can gain momentum and create that. And you can choose who you want in and who you want out. And if they all think like you, you can start to build up a momentum. So I think it's no different than trying to organize a group to go to, in one space, they get kicked out in the physical world. You can't do that. You can't have those meetings at this coffee shop. You go find another space. So, they'll constantly be moving around. I don't know that they'll have quite the critical mass as the huge platforms that have mass appeal, that have also got an audience which you can grow because those that might be on the fence might be seeing your stuff. So I think they will be fractional. It'll become a fractional or, fragmented. And I think that's probably better. But also on the flip side of that, what happens in the dark? When you see these things happening on Twitter and in Facebook, there's more of a spotlight on it, so things can be taken, and out against it, or people can see what's going on. But when you chase it all away into the recesses of these smaller platforms, I think a lot of momentum on some of these ideas can really take foot before it's caught and then it's surfaced.
Right. And we talked about the storming of the Capitol. I mean, that was something that was hatched and planned and organized through social media. How much of that do you think was on Facebook versus these other really small little chat groups and things like that?
I think the broader sense of it was on Facebook groups because, of course, they can be made private and smaller. But I think some of the more hardcore groups that were at the center of the organization that were working were in the smaller ones. But that's more from an operational perspective, not necessarily from a larger messaging and a recruiting perspective. I still think that the Facebook groups and WhatsApp are still some of the key ones that where these groups are growing, communicating and exchanging their ideas.
Yeah, and we just heard about how TikTok overtook YouTube for the number of views. That was correct, right?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know the numbers, but for 30 seconds, at most 30 seconds to a minute, you can see a lot of videos. The views going up versus the average length of a YouTube video is substantially longer. So I suspect YouTube has a total volume of video that might be more, but when they say views, it's like from start to finish, how many things are consumed, little snippets. So they definitely have the ability with the audience and with the format being so much shorter.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok, but I see TikTok videos all the time on Instagram and on Facebook, and they're quite often very funny. I enjoy the creativity.
There is talent coming out of there, and I think there's dangers to that, and I think most of the dangers with TikTok is probably the youth that are on it. I don't know that it poses the same dangers as for organizing larger groups because the format doesn't really play to that. If you can get your message across in a series of 30-second videos, I guess that's okay, but it is definitely a little different. It just has a different set of dangers, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Similar to Instagram, they've just recently come out, and Facebook was sitting on their own internal report saying that Instagram is very, very damaging to teenage girls for body image and all of that. And so you can see where TikTok could be in a similar vein with the types of content that's being produced there. So they all have their dangers. I think, like anything, too much of anything, even in tech, you need to be mindful. And when there's too much money to be made and it's unregulated, it's a danger. I mean, our cars are regulated, for safety, and so why not other things? I think regulation in some form. I know that not a lot of people will not like to hear that, but oversight. Let's maybe call it oversight, and some common sense regulation. You got to wear a seatbelt because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're seeing that things by reports are and the findings are that there's damage happening, I think it needs to be investigated with more seriousness.
And before I let you go, I have to ask you what's the platform to watch? Is there a new thing that you're seeing that's going to be big, or is it one of the major ones?
There are some ones that Gen Z that are looking at there's one that the name escapes me at the moment, but here's this for a concept. Your profile is made up of memes by your friends. So you don't make your profile. Your friends make your profile for you in the form of memes. So that's one that's taking off with the Gen Z. I don't know where the dangers are in that, but I'm sure they'll surface. But yeah, that's so it's definitely very, very different what Gen Z wants out of a platform.
Yeah, it just gets weirder and weirder. Well, JP Holecka, CEO and founder of POWERSHiFTER Digital, thanks. It's always very enlightening to talk to you. Thanks.